Teaching the adult learner. What are we really talking about here? We're focusing on andragogy, the methods or techniques used to teach adults. Now, there are many parallels between andragogy and pedagogy, but there are also some very specific differences, particularly when we're looking at motivation and relevancy to the real world. Adult learners tend to base everything new against something they've already experienced. As opposed to children who are much more open to taking in what you're giving them at the moment, adults will immediately begin judging whatever you're showing them, discussing, trying to explore, experiment with, whatever, against something they have specifically felt, seen, heard, or experienced. Adults tend to regard busy work as insulting. This is where grade point issues become huge. If every single thing in the course is worth 2 points, to the busy adult learner, everything is going to seem as if this is only worth 2 points, then it's not that important, this must be busy work. This is why things like journals, blogs, any kind of reflective assignment needs to have some kind of grade related to it, and whatever the prompt is, it needs to be clear so that the individual recognizes this isn't busy work, there is a reason to do this, I will learn from this experience. Adults tend to compartmentalize their learning as separate from their everyday existence. This is a survival mechanism. All of us are incredibly busy people, and we all have many different hats or jobs or responsibilities. For a couple hours a day, you're a parent. For a couple hours a day, you're a worker. For a couple hours a day, you're the chef. For a couple hours a day, you're the chauffeur. Whatever it is, it's that compartmentalization that allows us to accomplish all the many things we have to do in our lives. The problem comes when we're trying to learn something new and bring it into our everyday existence, the way we think, the way we speak, the way we do. Adults truly expect personalized feedback, not just a number or grade. This is one of those places where a rubric can really help us because the breakout is already there. By adding some specific notes along with whatever number grade the student has earned, you've immediately given a little more detail and personalized what you're sharing with the student as opposed to good job or you missed the boat here. Adults are truly motivated by relevancy to their real world situations. Again, this is something that has to be addressed head on. It doesn't matter what the class is, whether it's something very basic or something incredibly high level and complicated. Let's look at the specific issues. These are pretty obvious. Access, time constraints, workload issues. Related to what we just spoke about. You are a very busy adult. You don't have time to fritter away, blah, blah, blah. If you can address those head on and explain to the student why this work is important, it helps them deal with this whole workload issue. Many of our students have not been in a classroom environment in a very long time. By being up front, particularly at the first meeting or the very beginning of the class, letting them know what you expect from them time-wise throughout the week, the focus, the level of dedication, this will help them build a better vision in their own heads as to what is expected, how am I going to get this done, how am I going to fit this into everything I have to do in the rest of my life. If an adult learner doesn't feel that what we're doing in the classroom has any authentic validity to their lives, they may cram for a test and 5 minutes later they'll forget it all. Because if they don't recognize a way to use what we're giving them in any fashion, it could be active, it could be purely cognitive, it could be something more emotional, an affective concept. We need to help them build that bridge. Motivation relates strongly to the applicability, but again, there are so many demands on our students that it's very easy for them to lose the motivation they may come in with. We'll talk about this a little more. There are a couple very specific things to do with motivation, but recognize this is a key issue for a lot of our learners. And this one can really become uncomfortable if you don't address it head on. Many of our students come in with a consumer or a customer mentality. I'm paying for this, so come on, prof, work with me. Don't push me too hard. I'll do the best I can. We need to set a tone of personal responsibility for the individual. This is not your traditional consumer transaction. The student pays and they get the grade. It doesn't work that way, and we all understand that, but many of our learners don't. By recognizing that this is an issue and addressing it in a professional fashion, you can help break that down and get the student to recognize this is not simply pay for play. They have to do the work, they have to put in the effort, they have to stay involved and engaged. Let's look at the best practices for working with adult learners. We know, again, they base everything against previous experiences. This is where wikis, threaded discussions, and different kinds of simulations truly are valuable for our learners. Why? Because a threaded discussion is an opportunity for a student to see how a peer, someone in the same position they are, is looking at a subject or relating it to their own experience. It can be much more powerful for a student to hear something positive or a real-world application of a concept from a peer rather than you, the professor, because they see the peer more as their equal. You're the professor. This is your job. This is what you do. Of course, you're going to support it. But when a peer offers a different way of applying an idea or sharing how they've used it or how they could have used it in the past, it has a stronger possibility of changing the way the adult is thinking about whatever the concept is based upon their own previous experience. The busy work is insulting, the blogs, doing real-world research, synthesis, and real-world postings, getting the students to use what is going on in the real world as a tool for their own internal reflection. A lot of time reflection doesn't get the respect it deserves. But study after study after study demonstrates how authentic, engaged reflection in one's own practice helps build a stronger schema for the individual to then use this information and translate it into action out in the real world. So if you have them blogging or journaling, you need to be sure you're clear with the prompts. They recognize why this is relevant, what they're actually doing, and so they're able to see the value in it. A blog gives them the opportunity to go back and see the progress that they've made throughout the class. And if you open up the blogs and let them read the blogs or journals of their peers, again, going back to what we just talked about, basing everything against previous experience, it helps open up the whole of the class so you're not just experiencing it through your own eyes, but through the perspective of your peers. The compartmentalization issues, getting students engaged throughout the week. This is crucial, not just because, particularly with blended learning, there are so many opportunities throughout the week to keep the class moving and keep it meaningful and make it a part of the student's everyday life. But again, from best practice research, we know that any student, but again, particularly an adult, who tries to cram everything in at one shot will never retain it. And the chances of that information being translatable into some kind of creative action used outside of the classroom diminish greatly when it's a one-shot learn deal. Getting students engaged throughout the week helps break down that wall of that is school, this is life, and school and life mesh together so that the learning becomes more of an authentic part of who the individual is as a thinking person. The personalized feedback issue, we can shoot out emails, the threaded discussions where you can not only respond to the whole group, but you can respond individually to a student. Giving grades in real time, now it doesn't mean you have to be online 24/7, that's ridiculous. But instead of having to wait for the next class, if you're able to get those grades in there earlier and send feedback to the students before you meet for the face-to-face class, then if there's an issue, you can discuss it right there. And it helps the student, again, feel that this classroom is an environment. This is something they are a part of, not just the consumer who pops in at a given time and then is gone for the rest of the week. And the relevancy to the real world issue, this is where threaded discussions with peers, collaborative creating, using real-time data, and authentic materials are crucial. The more we bring the world into our studies, the more the student is able to translate what we give them into real-world understanding and practice. Transparency is one of these things that we don't tend to think about as we're planning our classes, but it's something we need to be aware of and be open to with our students. Number one, these are adults. We have to be honest with them. If you're giving an important assignment and you know you're not going to even get to it for a week or two, tell the students. Be open to their questions, ideas, and opinions. Adults come in being used to having their voices heard. When we don't give them the opportunity to share their perspectives, when we shoot them down and just say, oh, because, we've immediately lost them. They step back from being present in the classroom experience and start treating it as just this responsibility, I got to get done and get past. We need to speak to our students, not at them. This is one of those traps that we all can easily fall into, particularly when we have a lecture and we have a lot that we need to get into. It's very easy just to be focusing on getting through our notes or our slides rather than really looking at our students. Are you reading your notes or are you glancing at your notes and then talking to your class? Sound familiar, doesn't it? I know it seems like we're repeating a lot of this information, but these are crucial concepts that people truly don't tend to think of when they're planning their classes and preparing to teach their adult learners. We need to empower them, encourage them, create opportunities where they're taking the concepts we're focusing on and find that real world connection. Websites, news stories, journal articles, the more real world connections and real world materials that they're able to find for themselves and share with their peers, the more it builds that bridge to real world relevancy. And here it is. Transparency from an adult's perspective equals respect. We have to remember we are entering a life that is already in progress. These aren't kids who come to us and know that it's their job to take in what we give them. These are adults who come for specific reasons, whatever the motivation, to get a better job, to get a job, to support their family because they're embarrassed that they don't have an education, whatever it is. We are a small blip in the whole of their lives. So we need to take that time that we get with them and make the most of it. And part of that is recognizing how to deal with these students in a respectful fashion. It's very easy, going back up, to speak at the class instead of remembering your job is to communicate to each individual in that classroom, be it a real classroom or a virtual one. Everybody who's a parent is laughing right now. It rarely works with children, but when you just say because with adults and leave it at that, you've lost them. They lose respect for the concept. They lose respect for you as the instructor. If you don't have an answer, say it and throw it back at them. Because, I'm not sure. I can think of a couple different ways. How about you going out and coming back with a couple ideas why you think that might be? But you can't just throw out because it is and walk away from it. Having empathy, not sympathy, empathy goes a long way with these students. I hear you. I know what it's like to be a crazy busy adult. When I was getting my doctorate, I had 5 jobs and 14 kids, blah, blah, blah. Empathy. But at the same time, you still have to hold them accountable to the work that needs to be done. And having empathy means that you're able to say to them, look, I recognize you're going through a tough time. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but this is for you. What you're doing right now is truly going to serve you and help you move forward in your life and be able to think from a bigger, broader perspective and solve your own problems better. They have to be held accountable, or you're truly not doing them a service. Because again, as we all know, in the real world, you have to be accountable for your actions, or there are always consequences. We need to be clear with our goals and all the different potential ramifications for our students. Because when we're teaching, we are creating opportunities for change, right? So if we're changing the way a person understands, not just a particular concept, but maybe understands their own way of learning or thinking, or the knowledge that they have, their own abilities, Are we helping this person transform into someone who's more self sufficient, a better problem solver, going to transform them from someone who is not confident in their abilities to someone who is willing to take chances and take risks and try new things? These could have potential ramifications in their real world. I'll go back to an old movie, Working Girl, which, it's a really cute little fun romantic comedy, but at the core, it's about how a woman goes through this whole transformation, and she does have to let go of who she was, how she saw herself, the person she envisioned herself to be. That is what some of our students will go through. So you may have to be empathetic sometime to someone who says, I'm working on this, I'm not getting support here, so and so, my best friend now thinks I'm a big snob because I'm using fancy words. Being aware that these kinds of transformations can occur, and sometimes there is negative that goes along with all the positive, can help us be more empathetic and be there to support our students as they move forward. Again, we've all been in these positions. We've been adult learners. We need to support our students in a different fashion than we do children. Remember, they are independent, hopefully, responsible adults who are in a unique situation than what they'll probably be in for the rest of their lives. That will empower us to serve them better as we help them grow, change, learn, become more fluent in ability, be able to understand their own cognition, and be better prepared to go out and make a difference in the world around them.